Dear Lord and Father, thank you that you promise us that where 2 or 3 are gathered, you are there in the midst. Lord, we welcome you amongst us today and celebrate the gift of life that you have lavished upon each of us. We ask that you would open our ears so that we may hear your voice, open our minds so that we may receive your eternal wisdom, open our spirits so that we may know your leading and guidance, and open our hearts so that we may receive your wonderful love. We all ask all this in the glorious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Hi, I'm Jim Huber, your junior warden. I'm sure that most of you know, yeah, that's him. Anyway, I want to welcome you all to Welcome and Wayfinding Coffee. I always say coffee sans the dean, but I guess without the dean. For some of you that may have been following his travels on Facebook, this morning he had already posted the walk on the Via della Rosa, which takes place on Sunday, the Way of the Cross. And so we know that he's having I think probably one could safely say, a recharging spiritual experience in the Holy Land, and one that we will all get an opportunity to hear much, and maybe even more than we want to, over the next several months. So keep him today in your prayers, and to know that he's already walked the way of the cross this morning. So today we're going to have an opportunity to talk about the Welcoming Commission and have a time to have some discussion and an opportunity to see kind of what's being fermented right now in regards to the Welcome Center. I think we have a clip of the dean. So, he's here all the time. Ah, there he is, see?
Happy Sunday, everybody. It is the morning of Sunday, the 19th of April, I believe. And as you get this video, I will be about halfway through my pilgrimage to the Holy Land with the North American Deans Conference. And I have no doubt it is just going swimmingly. Now, that would be no excuse not to have prepared a brief message for all of you that are gathered for this morning's Sunday morning coffee with the Dean. And so that is what this is intended to be, a greetings from Jerusalem and well wishes for all of you there this morning. I'm sorry I can't be there with you, but I do have just a brief message to offer in anticipation of what you are about to hear from the Welcoming Center crowd. As you probably know well, one of the primary factors that led to the recent call of me to be your new dean was my excitement about what I heard in your profile about a desire to grow the faith community there at St. Mark's. And there's a number of ways that we grow faith communities, as you know. We've spent a lot of time this past year focused on culture and climate, making it a safe place to gather, making it a place that performs well, that we pursue what's called cathedral excellence in terms of program and worship, that our staff are capable and conscientious, that our cathedral council is effective and efficient and makes wise decisions. All these sorts of technocratic pieces that go into growing a place. We've put some time into that. The culture and climate stuff around just being a fun place and a place people want to be matters a lot as well, and I think we've done well with that our first year together. There are also some specific practical ways that we grow faith communities, and it seems to me that now that we've done a little bit of housekeeping and some internal work this first year together to learn to love one another well, to learn to communicate with one another well, when there are disagreements, to learn how to do that well, all of that stuff that makes us a place that people might want to connect to, it makes sense then that the next step would be to do some of those practical things that in fact help people connect with us. And so we've spent a lot of time with a little small project since winter working on the Dean's Welcome Center, which is kind of a fun little experiment to see how it is that we manage change in a small way here at the Cathedral during this first year. So it's been fun to watch how that has worked out. But essentially the Welcome Center is about some of the practical ways that we help people connect with our faith community. And it's all through welcome and wayfinding that we would create spaces that indicate to people who show up for the very first time who we are and what we're about, that we're a thriving faith community that knows that new people are going to be showing up here on a regular basis. And so we're prepared for that. And there's lots of ways to indicate that we're that kind of faith community that is poised and ready for growth. And one of the very practical ways that we do that, in addition to being kind, fun, happy, good-hearted folks, is that we would have spaces that indicate welcome, and that we would have signage that would indicate a desire to help people who've never been here have a positive first experience. And that takes planning. It is a way of changing the faith community. It sometimes seems awkward to people who've been around here and who take their wayfinding for granted. But our target audience is, at this point, folks who have no idea how to get around here. And so everything we do from here on out about growth around welcome and wayfinding is going to be for that target audience. And so you're going to hear some proposals that are going to come up from this Welcome Center Task Force that is all focused on helping that new group of people find their way through our front doors and into the belly of our community. So you're going to hear a little bit about paint colors, you're going to hear a little bit about carpet, you're going to hear about lighting and all sorts of space projects. You're also going to hear from a very hardworking signage committee who has done a lot of research, not only in-house here, but in other faith communities, to see what best practices are about helping people find their way through a bit of a Byzantine facility. So you're going to hear some great stuff. I hope you'll have a good conversation with folks presenting this, and I look forward to coming back and hearing if we kind of move the time forward just a little bit more. The great desire would be to have much of this in place by fall kickoff, and so we'll see how this goes. I hope you enjoy your time together. I hope you'll give great applause to the folks who've worked so hard just to get us to this point, and I'll appreciate hearing back from everybody. So have a good time this morning. Count on my prayers for you. And God bless and Godspeed. Take care.
Does that work? It seems tenuous. That's right. Okay, we're going to have several presentations. Linda Brandt, who is the Consul Chair of the Welcoming Commissioner, will be presenting to you. Along with that, from the First Impressions folks, Marie Schlenk and Ursula Worth will be making some presentation. The signage team presentation is it from Joanne? Joanne Chris. Erica Levens England will be presenting. And then I'll come back and see if there are questions or discussion. So with that, I want to make just one comment. The Easter egg tree is all of the ministries that are supported by the Wells Foundation. And during the coffee hour, after the 10:30 service, James Davis will be here, and maybe other Wells Board members for questions and discussion, if you'd like, regarding the Wells Board. So, without any further comment, I give you Linda Brandt.
wanted to talk for 5 minutes about how the Welcome Commission ended up with a hat called the Welcome Center. Now, this is kind of convoluted, but I think it's important to know that 3 years ago we established a new governance, and a lot of the new governance can just keep rolling along and you won't notice. But in their wisdom, the governance committee chose to package all the ministries that have something to do with the first welcome for the first newcomer, for the first visitor, and everyone that touches that visitor that could possibly be a new member is now under the Welcoming Commission. And at first I said I wasn't called for that, but turns out once I got into it, I really got into it, and I see now that these ministries really, really matter, and we have to raise the bar so that everyone that steps inside our portals will say, gosh, I'd like to join that group. Or they say, I have an inquiring mind, I would like to inquire about my faith here. And look, they have a bookshop. It's right inside the door, and that means they must be inquiring here too, so I want to join this inquiring group. Thirdly, we know that we've got 30 seconds. 30 seconds is what they say. We've got 30 seconds from when someone visits to say, whoa, they've got their act together here. There is no chaos. They're so organized. And so the Welcome Commission actually established the First Impressions Committee 2 years ago to look at the idea of clutter and what you see visually when you come in the narthex and where the paper is stashed around. And they concluded that we did have a lot of clutter and we did need to clean up our first impressions for visitors. And that's how we established the beautiful coffee hour also. Hospitality, headed by Ursula, and First Impressions headed by Marie Schlink. And then we got a new dean. And he said, this is a no-brainer. We need a welcome center. And we are not using this space that we used to call the Bishop's Hall, right? No, the Dean's Hall. Yeah. He said you don't even come in that space. If you kind of find your way from our nice parking lot, then what? You don't even know. So you come in, you have to take a left. Those double doors are locked. He said, that's not very welcoming. And so he said, you have to take a left. And there's prison glass there. And then you have to push a buzzer to get in. He said, that's not very welcoming right away. So right away he said, well, I think the Welcoming Commission has a job, and we're going to start something called the Dean's Welcome Center Task Force. And in collaboration with Property, Kathleen was very good to say, yes, we could try something new, and it's a big deal for those working on it. I counted last night, the work plan shows 32 people on the work plan, and each of them are feverishly involved in their niche deal. So it doesn't look like anything now, but we wanted you to know about it before we start painting red walls and doing dynamic things in our signage and the walls. There was something else. Goals. Yes, I want to join this place. I have an inquiring mind. 32. I said it all. Thank you for coming. Share the news, and know that a lot of people are not here. So all of you need to be ministers of communication to communicate now to your network what the heck is going on. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ursula Roth. I've never stood up here before, so bear with me. I'm part of the First Impressions team. There. I'm part of the First Impressions team with Marie. and Dan Airy. Dan Airy is a designer, and he did our parlor for us several years ago, and other things. First, I'm going to talk about the two vestibules that we have and a new proposed cloakroom, which is down the hall, the wide hall at the end of the refectory. And Marie will talk about the actual welcome center. So we've got about 5-10 minutes now, right? What I'd like to say about, first of all, the vestibule here, you'll see it's been painted. The goal is to have it warm and welcoming with clear direction on where to go when you walk in the doors. And the double doors will be open at weekends when we have receptionists sitting at the desk in the welcome center. So the idea is when the doors are open, you'll clearly be able to see somebody who can direct you and help you and have a warm, welcoming face. The doors will be open, hopefully, all the time when we move along and can afford receptionists during the week also. The triptych, still with the welcoming, with the vestibule, the triptych by Larkin, the lovely triptych's been removed and is in storage waiting for a new place. It's blue and not particularly welcoming, and the image is appreciated from a distance rather than close up. And there you be close up to see it, so there is a better place for it. So right now it's in storage. We've hung and backed a Peruvian rug, which we bought from the bookstore. I think Michael Summerfield brought it back from Peru. We have a touched-up bench without a cushion to discourage sleeping, which the administration was concerned about. So the bench has been touched up and now it's brighter and the scratches are gone. A new console has been bought for that opposite the bench. We have in mind 2 wrought iron lamps and a piece of artwork, which will be hopefully by a gentleman who, I think Chinese, who painted the painting on the front of the installation program for the Dean. It's been painted, the ceiling's been painted. You'll notice the ceiling has blue and green around it. So does the welcome center and the long hallway. This ties all the spaces together. That was done a while ago, and actually it's working to our advantage because it ties them all together. Those colors are blue and green, and the colors that we've been inspired by for the whole of this area comes from the seal at the crossing in the nave. Blues, greens, and reds and golds. The radiator now works in there to make it physically warm. So I think that's all I have to say about that. Now the handicapped entrance is kind of an equal vestibule on the other side of what will be the Dean's Welcome Center. And for that, the First Impressions team is looking for a nice container for the collection of items for the outreach ministries. It'll be lockable so that when we have other people in the building that it can't be rifled. And the art has been rehung there. The quilt given by Paul Thatcher's family has been rehung there. So that's all I have to say about those 2 entrances. And I'll talk about the copex and the hallway when Marie's done with it. Thank you.
Hi, I haven't been up here before either. I don't think. I wanted to share some of the goals we have for this Welcome Center, this new room, hallway that will become more of a room by what we're going to do to it. We want it to be warm, inviting, gracious, saying, come in, we're here and we're waiting for you. This is who we are at St. Mark's. I'd like to see it somehow have a sense of show that this is a community of love, and that's a very, very general thing. We won't say that on the wall, but hopefully what you see when you look around will say that to you. This is going to be the go-to place for information presented in an engaging and attractive way that will draw you in. It needs to be neat, peaceful, orderly, and energizing, all at the same time. It needs to look like it's been there for a long time, that it blends with the old, which is a very old building, with a lot of history behind it, and we wanted to really respect that history. But at the same time, we want it to feel fresh, bright, vibrant, energizing, and up to date. It needs to be flexible, functional, and respect all the needs of all the programs that we have going on here. Some of them will be changing in terms of how they operate in that particular space. Like there probably won't be a place for serving food to hundreds of people like we do sometimes. So there will be some changes there. Now, how do we do this? I think as a designer, when I think of the three most important things, generally when I walk into a space, there are color and light and an arrangement, the arrangement of furniture or whatever is in a particular space. So in this case, most of our walls will be painted a warm, bright, very neutral color. The ceiling has already been repainted. It's a very subtle thing. We haven't covered up the beautiful old striping that is there, but the ceiling is lightened, and it's amazing how just a few degrees made a difference in there. That is, our painting is being done by Venus de Mars, and he is incredibly meticulous. He hasn't even used any tape to tape off all that current painting. It's really amazing. The wall, there will be at least one red wall. When we went, thanks Erica, just right on time. When, Linda didn't tell you, but a group of us went on a tour through a lot of the downtown churches back in early January, and just to look at signage and the way they service new people coming in and visitors. And one of the places that just blew us away was Bethlehem Lutheran out on Lyndale. They have this gorgeous red wall that you see right when you walk in the door that very clearly welcomes you in and tells a little bit about who they are with just a few words. And so that was an inspiration to us, and we intend to have a red wall as you come in. And we are calling it an identity wall, and it will be a rich, energizing red that looks at home here in our space, that greets you immediately. And we are working with the artist from that did the wall at Bethlehem to work out something that's uniquely ours, along with our communications team, because the branding thing enters in here too. There will also be a wall of beautiful photography by Philip Schau, who, you see his wonderful photography in our newsletter, and there are still a few pieces around here, and you see him lurking around at just about every event. So he has a lot of wonderful action pictures that I think will tell a great story. So we will use a lot of his photography. There will be a large blue carpet which won't be tacked down. It'll be a carpet, but a rug that'll be in the center of that space that'll define it, and I think will make it feel more like a room. And that will be blue. So anyway, there'll be some bright, warm, inviting colors. The lighting in that space is important. We've really struggled with that. Now we are going to be adding some track lighting so that it can focus on the red wall and the photography and brighten up the space. The old lighting will still be there, and that's going, the electrician has already been here, and I think that's going to be finished this week. And we have not been able to decide on a color for the walls because we've been really going through it. We thought we had the perfect color picked out, put it on the walls. We thought it was a nice warm white with a lot of golden tones in it, and it looked pink with the lighting that was in there. So we decided we're not going to choose that color until all of the lighting is installed. And so after it is, we will be doing that. There will also be some ambient and task lighting, table lamps in 2 or 3, probably 3 places that'll give a nice cozy feeling to the room. And there's a little bit of world light that'll come in from the bookstore and the hallways. The arrangement, as you walk in the door, to your right there will be a desk where there will be a person either sitting there or in the area to welcome you and answer questions and direct you. And this will be a greeter receptionist kind of person. To the left will be a coffee bar, and above it will be an electronic screen. That's as you come in those double doors, right to your left. And to the right of the welcoming desk, there will be a small seating area. All of that has been very limited by our visit from the fire marshal, who has defined very clearly where we can put furniture and where we can't. So there won't be a lot, but there will be a nice cozy seating area. Let's see. Oh, and on the west wall, there'll probably only be a bench. We can't have any furniture jutting out into that area because it's clearly a passageway. And those 2 areas coming off those double doors will not be carpeted. They will still be the clear terrazzo floors. And no one has said anything about the bookstore yet. But we understand, and we're really excited the bookstore is going to be eventually moving down there. So this whole place is going to be a real hub on Sunday mornings particularly, and hopefully during the week as we have visitors coming in to visit the bookstore, as well as all the other visitors that come. And to begin with, as Ursula told you, we won't be able to have the double doors open every day, but in the future, hopefully not too far future, that will be the case. So it will really be a hub for all of us there to meet and greet. And I just want to end with, Dan isn't here, Dan Erie, I don't think, and he has worked with us some, but he's a full-time working designer, so he really hasn't had the time to spend. And I think my husband Terry, who's a retired architect, and we run a lot of things by him as well. I guess that's basically it. Okay.
We're ready to finish. The hallway won't take long, but I just did want to talk about the carpeting that Marie mentioned in the Welcome Center. It will be a really low pile. It's commercial carpeting, and to facilitate walkers and wheelchairs getting over it, it's kind of backed in a rubber, and there's kind of a little ramp leading up to, this is, you know, if this is the carpeting, there's a little ramp leading up. Now this is huge in my huge scale, but anyway, we just want you to know it's really easy for wheelchairs to negotiate. and it will be heavy and won't move, and it'll cover almost all of that space except for the two areas where the double doors are. We'd really like a place to hang coats without having these moving racks all over the church, and they might have to stay until we come up with the total plan, but for now, for most of the coats could be hung in the hallway, which is the other side of the refectory. It's a wide hallway, so we plan on putting wooden boards along the wall and coat pegs along there. And then across if you're in the hall, on the other side of the wall, there are some big areas of wall where we could put posters on for upcoming events. And also it's nice and wide, so it could be sort of a meet and greet space when people say, well, see you next week. And so we think also it will be conversational okay, I think that's all I have to say.
Hi, I'm Erica Levins, England, and Paul does send his greetings from Jerusalem. He's having a fantastic trip, and I told him I hoped he would spend a coffee with the dean, kind of going over his trip sometime. I think it could be really great. So anyway, I made I don't think I'd say mistake, but I made a comment one time that I spent the first 4 weeks here lost and just hoping I could run into somebody that I knew, and now I actually know my way around pretty well, especially having joined the signage committee. But anyway, I was invited to join the signage committee and use my knowledge as a new person who got lost here, and I'm also a very directionally challenged person, so some of it might have been what you'd call a personal problem. But so anyway, I'm going to represent our group, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the work that we've been doing with signage. So. We are collaborating with the Welcome Commission, and eventually we'll do some work with property to really look at how we can improve our signage around the church. And we're going to be making a number of informative presentations such as this one, just to kind of outline some of our findings and what we have looked at. And our members are Joanne Christ, Mary Lusk, Cliff Crawford, myself, and Sarah Kingsley. And it's been a really, really nice group because Joanne and Mary have some history, and both Sarah and Cliff kind of come at it from somewhat of a marketing aspect, and then I would definitely have the new person angle. So our purpose is, the guiding question of our purpose is, how can the sacred space of St. Mark's enhance the opportunities of all members and visitors to experience inspiring, inquiring, and inclusive community? So everything we do, we're really keeping that in mind. And our goals have been to keep things user-friendly, to have more intuitive signs that help newcomers, but also, I think, even help people who are here a lot. And we want to incorporate the current branding, the important work that Communications Committee has been doing. And then we really wanted to look at how are we currently using our spaces, and how might we look to the future, and how we might envision some changes to how we use our space. So our process has been to do a lot of walkthroughs. We have walked through the building a lot, and we made observations, we discussed spaces, and we really identified our most challenging areas. Just to give you an example, we talked about it a little bit, when you come in here as a new person, it's like, do you go to these closed double doors, do you take a left? And once you get up the stairs, there's like, do you go straight ahead to the current chapter house? Do you take a left, and then a left, and then another left to get to the nave? And so we really looked at where could we help people find their way around. And a lot of times we host other outsider events. I think of the music program that we hosted in the fall. And really our best bet during that time was we tried to have some kids around that tried to take people to spaces. But that's an example of where improving our signage could help our outside users as well. What we did is we created some logical categories for our spaces just to help us understand what we have here. And so we looked at what are designated office spaces, gathering spaces, closed rooms you could use for meetings, education spaces, consecrated spaces, amenities, transitional spaces, and then your exit, entry, emergency routes. And so then what we kind of got to is we started looking at, okay, how are the rooms named? Are they serving their purpose? Is it something where we should look at changing a name? And so anytime, and this is going to come towards the end of the presentation, we looked at some things where we might benefit from changing some room names to be more intuitive. And if we have made a suggestion, and it is just a suggestion, it would be because we'd like to better describe the space. We'd like to simplify language. And we would like to remove language that appears too much only like an insider would understand it, what you might call jargon, things that somebody trying to find their way around the space might not connect to. So that was our guideline as we looked at some of those things. So as was mentioned earlier, there was a team that went out and looked at other churches, and then within our team, we've done some of that. My kids are really annoyed with me because every time I go somewhere, I go, oh, I can take a picture of that sign. Hold on. And they're like, why do you always do that? And I'm like, well, that's a real cool flag over there. Did you see that flag? And they're like, oh my gosh, you're so embarrassing. And I'm like, oh, I'm used to being embarrassing. So, but anyway, we really started looking and had our eyes for signs that really seem like they're serving a great purpose, and then signs that are sort of in the category we don't want this isn't what we want. And we have started working with some professionals in the field. We have talked to a few architects that gave us a sense for some things, but we've also worked with a sign consultant who, that's her business, is to do signs for large places like ourselves. And so what we did is this is our list of must-haves. If we're gonna add new signage and we're gonna do a real comprehensive throughout the whole church, here's some of our must-haves. They have to be easy to read. There's no point in putting up signs that then, they're this little and they don't serve their purpose. We really want consistency. We want things to look the same everywhere. I think that helps with your ease of getting yourself around when you have a similar look. They need to have some ability to be changed as their staff changes, as their program changes. We want to be able to have a changeability factor. We'd really like to incorporate branding. Communications has done a lot of work on having something, that you can identify as St. Mark's, and so that would be important. And then we've looked at dividing our categories into, purpose. Is it to name or label the room? Does the sign direct traffic, flow traffic? Is it a display sign that's kind of adding aesthetic appeal or identity? And then, our more practical entrance, exit, and emergency route. So our timelines have been, in April, we're sharing some of the information that we've gathered with people like you. And we are going to solicit written feedback and considerations, and you'll have an opportunity at the end of this presentation to write some of your thoughts down. We really want this to be a transparent process. We're not trying to be some secret group that's out to change things without getting input. And we really want to, work with some of the professionals in the field around signage to really make sure we're meeting our goals. May and June, we hope to present to council. Council's aware of our process. We've presented that part, but they would make final decisions. And so we're hoping to maybe have some kind of pitch where we really have more specifics about cost and some of those important issues. And then in September, with I guess God willing, you'd start to see some of our work up and around. So this is the part where we wanted to talk to you a little bit about some possible sign changes. I put a smiley face there because I wanted everybody just to be relaxed, and sometimes you start talking about changing things and it ruffles people's feathers. And so I want you to know, council makes final decisions. We know that. We've got a good structure around that here at St. Mark's. We have some handouts for you, as I mentioned, for you to provide some written feedback, and I really hope you'll do that. And then also we encourage you to give some verbal feedback to council members, committee members, first impressions, Linda with the Welcome Commission. I mean, that's what this is about, is to try to get people involved in the process. So, as a reminder, if there's a spot that we are considering a name change for, or we're suggesting, it's because we think we could better describe its current use or future use. We'd like to simplify language. We want to remove jargon that doesn't connect, especially with newcomers. So, here we go with our first suggestion. This is known as the fireplace room. And one of the things we noticed is that we don't particularly use it to gather around the fireplace. And it is a nice feature, but there also is the library that has a fireplace. So if you think about it from a newcomer's eyes, it could be confusing in that regard because we don't use this space necessarily around the fireplace. So we thought, well, how are we using this space? And so some suggestions came up about calling it a gathering room, a community room, maybe a hospitality room. And the other part with that is there's like a marketability part. If we start to rent our space for weddings, or you have funerals, or you have those kinds of things, that sends the message that this is a space where you gather lots of people, versus fireplace may not send that message. So that's one idea we had. And so chew on that a little bit and sit with that, I guess, a little bit. Another thought is that we have this over here, and it's called the refectory, and that isn't language that particularly connects with people. Maybe it does some people. I don't mean to offend anybody who loves refectories, but one of the things we talked about is we do use it a lot for food, which is probably why it's called a refectory. But we thought that banquet room, and it can be divided into 3 spaces. Banquet room may have a better feel, especially for someone who might like to use this space for different things, and it may match kind of what we're doing with it. So that's an idea. Another idea was hospitality room. Maybe many of you don't even know we have an ambulatory hall. I have to admit I was not sure what an ambulatory hall was, nor was I familiar with where it was in this church, but I tried to do this slideshow a little bit if you kind of go on a walking tour. So right now we're walking down here, we're walking through the new Welcome Center. You take a right, there's a gigantic Coke machine that welcomes you as you come into where the handicap entrance is, so if you're thirsty, you are covered right when you walk in. And then you take a right and you head down this long, windy hall to the All Saints Chapel and Columbarium. And so we would like to think about calling that something different than ambulatory hall, and we thought it made sense because you're heading towards All Saints Chapel that it might become the All Saints Hall. So it's logical, it's more intuitive, and the other cool thing about that hallway is there's a lot of mission and ministry out of that hallway with some of our feeding programs, and I think All Saints Hall does a little bit to connect with some of that work that we do there, and that will also connect to the next slide. We have this room that used to be Holy Grounds when it was like a coffee shop. Now it's often known as Warm Space. But we were thinking about maybe connecting with that All Saints idea, calling it the All Souls Room, because you're really servicing lots of people through there. And hopefully in the future, that room can be used for lots of things, not just Warm Space. And so there's a suggestion. Downstairs, and I don't know if any of you, and some people don't go down there. And anyway, if you continue down the hallway, there's a room that is called, it's the women's room. It's also known as the bride's room for when we have weddings. It isn't the best bride's room space, so I don't know how much it's being used as that. It's not a huge marketable, brides don't come in and get real excited about that room. So I've heard. But anyway, we thought we'd really like to look at calling it a family lounge. It would really make a nice space for if you're upstairs and you've got your kiddos kind of squirmy or your baby's crying and you feel like you need a little more privacy for feeding or that kind of thing. We could really start marketing that we have this space that we expect. We're expecting families, we're looking forward to you being here, and we have spaces that make you more comfortable. So this is an idea. There's things we need to work out with it. We need to think, do we then have adequate space for bathrooms? And so there's some logistics around this one. This is definitely one we need to work with property on. But it was an idea, and I've talked to Rich, as we thought, how cool would it be if we could get the service piped in there for sound? So if you stepped out with your baby as a mom or a dad, and then you'd have this space to go to, and you could still be hearing the sermon as you were feeding your baby or meeting their needs. And so we liked that idea.
And dads.
And dads. Yep. So currently, leading to the nave, we have the Bishop's Hall, but it's really used in an amazing way with the art. And actually, there aren't bishop pictures in it and those types of things. So we thought, what if we renamed it to really be more intuitive to the space and honor this amazing thing that goes on with the art in our hallway there. And here are some versions of how we could call it. But, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. There's also a lounge right there in that Bishop's Hall by the art gallery and the nave. That would be another spot where we could really label this a family lounge, have it set up with some books and things for kids. So another idea for that. This is actually, it's kind of hard to see, but this line here, the name of the room is actually Bishop Whipple Room. I think a lot of people just call it Whipple Chapel anyway, but again, for simplification, Whipple Chapel might serve our needs better. Okay, so this one is an interesting one I wanted to talk to you about. Currently, it's the chapter house, and I don't know if you've noticed, I didn't know this till I did the walkthroughs, but off of the chapter house is that side room, the Bishop Kellogg room, that you can also get to from the education wing, so you can come through two ways. And one of the things that we found, and it wasn't just me, I wasn't the only person that did this, but when people hear chapter house, they think it's this greenhouse on the parking lot sometimes. And so there is some confusion with that. And one of the ideas we had is we were looking at how can we have better sight lines down our hallway and some of those things. What if we consolidated some of the wonderful pictures and the history we have of deans and bishops and other legacy type people who have been important in the history of St. Mark's? What if we consolidated some of those and very artfully and respectfully and historically displayed those in one space or two spaces, if you will, because they're rooms combined, and we called it a legacy room and the legacy lounge. And then we worked with archives, and we had a way that you could really learn about these people, and it would be more impactful maybe than just seeing it on the hall in a picture or on the on the wall. And so our committee really likes this idea, and we felt like it more. And then what's happening is a lot of times if you're having leadership meetings in there, isn't that about creating a legacy for St. Mark's? So something to consider, and I would love to get your feedback, especially on that one. So we currently have an education wing. It goes all the way down. I tried to show you kind of three different pictures, but the hallway is one long hallway. And one of the reasons we want to move away from calling it the education wing is that we have education happening all over our church in lots of ways, adult ed, children ed, and especially our junior high and senior high is not in that hallway, so that could be confusing to a new person who might think that because that's education wing, everything with education happens there. And so we wondered about renaming it the Children's Hall, because that really identifies what we're doing down that hallway, and it sends the message to new people that we're a place that has space for kids, we expect kids, and we've planned for kids. So there's an idea. So with that in mind too, those first two classrooms down that education wing hallway, the first one is known as the Bishop Keeler room. This is kind of this idea of color coding the rooms had already been happening. But we wondered about really more formally calling them the red room, the blue room. Yes, yeah. And so we would then be honoring Bishop Keeler and Kellogg in that legacy room. So it's just really just transferring the focus of them to a room that they might get more notice anyway. And then this is called the Fontaine Auditorium. We wondered about calling it the Fontaine Theater, kind of from a marketable standpoint too, if you're going to have outside groups that might like to use it, with the idea of the Bishop Homes coming up, Bishop Homes, what's it called, Episcopal Homes. That project, a theater, might better describe the space. And then this one, we have the nave, and we really tried to come up with what we've heard from people that aren't born and raised Episcopalians. Nave doesn't mean a lot to them. So in one sense, it does honor some of the history of our tradition, and in the other sense, it's a word that can kind of come across jargonish a little bit. So we're curious if anybody has another great idea. We struggled with this one of how could you call it, how could it have a more intuitive name or something like that. And so I'd really like to hear what people said. And just from a first impression standpoint too, this area here, we have this amazing church that's so beautiful, and this is a very underwhelming entrance here. If you come in this way, if you look at it. And so I think first impressions and signage will work together to really, this could be grander. This really should send a message that you're entering a place of amazing worship, you know. So with that said, I think that we're going to be passing out some feedback forms. Jim's going to just close this up, I think. But appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
I want to thank all of the presenters that I think give a pretty good idea of what may be possible here. We have 5 minutes that we could have a question or a comment. So it's open for you, 5 minutes. Steve.
I can put this down on one of the forms and but in the meantime, we have some wonderful church history boards on the walls, starting with Warren Space. They're not being continued, I hear, through the grapevine, and I hear Linda Shalene had a lot to do with them. Could that information be put on our website? What are we doing with archived information?
We've talked about those boards and how important and
They draw-
interesting
they
that
draw a lot of
information is,
attention.
and how there's got to be some technologically advanced way we can put that and move it up to the legacy room and lounge so that people can actually see it.
It draws a lot of attention
Yeah.
from people.
It also needs to be updated.
Yeah.
History is continuing, it doesn't stop. Thank you, Steve, that's a good comment. Is this too loud? Am I too loud? Anybody else? Oh, Ursula.
How should we hand these in? Who to?
Hand it to Erica, she'll be right here by the door.
And if we don't do them today, what
I
should
would
we
say
do?
to Mary.
Or you can put them at the desk.
That's the
Yeah.
front desk?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
But not in that slot where I used to put things, it goes to the floor.
It all goes to the floor, underneath the desk. Yes. It's just one of those historical things.
And you'll see that we did put a spot for name. It's totally optional. But if you are willing to put your name, it's something that we might be able to follow up with you about if there was something we didn't understand about the feedback or anyway. So it's an option for you.
Anything else? I really want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank the presenters who helped bring this all to light. And I want to thank the Dean for turning this time over to allow us to provide this explanation. So go with God, go upstairs. Those of you that haven't been to church, go to church. Those of you that have been to church, thank you. And we're out of here.